Kia ora koutou, kamihi nui kia koutou. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us, and also for those who are joining us on the live stream. The idea that we have this evening is basically it will be a short presentation, but our primary focus is to offer you an opportunity to ask any questions you have. There's nothing more frustrating than coming to an event like this and finding that all the things that you want to know about were never addressed. We have a wonderful panel with us this evening, both staff and our students as well, representing both streams, the classical and the contemporary stream. So I think what I'd like to do first of all is just get everybody to introduce themselves, and I suppose I should have started with that myself, but I'm Gary Trinder, and it's my privilege and honour to be Director of the New Zealand School of Dance, and I'll hand you along the line.
Thank you, Gary. Kia orana, my name is Paula Steeds-Huston and I am Head of Contemporary here, and it's a pleasure to talk to you. We're usually in the studio and it's like awkward having a microphone, but it's lovely that you can all hear us and that we really want to try and keep this really informal so that you guys can be well informed from this evening. I will hand you.
Kia ora koutou, I'm Christine Gunn and I'm a classical tutor and head of the associate program. I've been around New Zealand School of Dance and formerly National School of Ballet for many, many years and love every minute and really enjoy seeing lots of new faces out there.
Hello, welcome everyone. My name is Matt Rofe. I was a contemporary dance student here and I graduated in 2012, and now I'm a full-time contemporary tutor here, and it has been amazing to be a part of this amazing school and to go from student to teacher.
Hi everyone, my name's Liesl Herrera. I'm a first year classical major and I am from Wellington.
Kia ora, my name is Sophie Sheaf Morrison and I'm a third year contemporary major and I'm from Taranaki.
So first of all, a little bit of history. The school was founded in 1967. As Christine mentioned, it was the National School of Ballet in those days. Our primary focus at that time, the school was created a few years after the then New Zealand Ballet was founded, and it followed along the European and Russian models to which the school was to provide dancers for the company. That responsibility still exists today, and we still have a very close relationship with the Royal New Zealand Ballet, of which the New Zealand School of Dance is the official school. In the 1980s, it was decided that with the creation of more and more contemporary dance companies emerging on the landscape, that we should diversify our training more so, and that we needed to embrace more contemporary dance. It was for that reason, in the 80s too, that the school changed its name from the National School of Ballet to become the New Zealand School of Dance. I think also one of the important things at that time was the fact that we were already recognizing the need to have the two streams. Although in those early days, it was very much more a generic-based education. Over time, we've moved into a situation where the two streams, the classical ballet and the contemporary dance stream, are much more easily identified, and a student entering the school now principally has to make a choice as to which area of study they want to progress through. For a lot of people, that's quite a challenging question in itself, and we have a lot of students who say, I don't know which box to tick. The difficulty the school has is that we, as a tertiary provider, only have the students for 2 or 3 years of study. And in a dancer's life, that's very short and goes very, very quickly. So the fact for us is that if we are to have students who are industry ready, we need to make sure that their focus of specialization lies in one particular study area, because we don't want to provide students with a broad-based generic education, which means that they're not necessarily equipped with the skills to be able to get work. And you only have to look at platforms like YouTube these days to see how technically comprehensive young dancers are. And we're competing on the global market, and it's really important that we graduate our students with, so that they can compete alongside their peers from other national schools around the world. I'm going to ask Paula now to talk a little bit about the curriculum and also give you an overview of a day in the life of the school.
Day in the life is joy. Yeah, normally, as part of the curriculum, there's a lot of different subjects, there's a lot of different units, and we've worked really hard over the last number of years to really hone down exactly, as Gary was saying, what does it mean to be industry ready? And that does keep evolving, especially in contemporary as well. You need to be up with what is happening in the industry, and ballet as well. That is a shifting world too. A normal day would be that you'd arrive here with joy after a good night's sleep and a good breakfast. We do two techniques. So as Gary mentioned, even if you are a contemporary major, you would then also do ballet 3 times a week, and vice versa. If you're a classical major, you'd do contemporary 3 times a week. So we usually start with what we call your major subject in the morning. So you do that technique first thing. And then we head into some of the more allied subjects. So for contemporary, that would be things like improvisation, partnering, repertoire. For the classical, so alongside that you'd have your pas de deux, you would have your coaching, so quite specific coaching for the female and the male, point work and repertoire as well, various different types of repertoire. Every student that comes in, which is a new thing that we've had, that we've put into the curriculum, is composition. And so even the classical students, because you need it, you need to keep this industry alive. And so the classical students also do composition. They learn composition techniques, as well as being able to create their own things. And I'm sure these two can speak to that later on. We have various different subjects that you'd also do in the afternoon. There's academics that Christine can talk to in a little bit, but as well as that we have things like nutrition. So once a week, especially in that first year, learning how to take care of yourself. We do budgeting, we learn how to write grant proposals in your second and third year. What we want is that you end up being industry ready, and that doesn't just mean as a dancer, it also means as an artist, so there's a lot of creativity in both streams, but also you as a human, how do you survive in the world? And I'm sure we can talk to that a little bit further. But Christine, did you want to talk about the academics and things? Okay.
So there were, before composition came in, and which is, as well as being a practical subject, is a theoretical subject, we had 3 main core academic subjects which relate to dance. So we do dance studies and dance history. We do anatomy, so that, and the focus there is on injury prevention, which is a useful tool to have. And then we do music, which also relates a lot to choreography and everything else in the future. And these are all done in block courses. So they don't last the whole year, they don't last the whole 2 years. But generally, all the academic subjects are dealt with in the first half of the year, so that the second half of the year can focus a little bit more on performance for each year group. Do you want to talk about the health professionals? Health team. While we're here, we have a huge support from a large health team that take care of the students. And at the moment, we're just engaging with a new student support manager who looks after general welfare of all the students. We have 2 physios who work alternate days or roughly on site each day. We have a good rapport with the sports doctor. He actually happens to be the Hurricanes doctor, those of you that are local, but he is a fabulous sports doctor and has been at the school for a long time, so is very familiar with dance injuries as well. We have a nutritionist on site. We do have, the students also study a little bit about performance psychology, but we do have a student psychologist on site just once a week that comes into the building. We have a Pilates instructor which does body conditioning. We have a gym instructor who deals with strength conditioning, and I probably left somebody else out. Any prompting from over there? Or no? But it's a whole team, and we all meet with the staff once a week with those health professionals to actually decide what is the best thing for each student should they become injured or have any other worries or things like that.
I think the important thing is, for a lot of people, that seems quite overwhelming, and I think it can smack of almost a situation where people think, why would you need that level of support? The reality for us is that there's quite a tension in as much as we are a tertiary provider, but we confront an industry that is quite ageist, and especially in terms of ballet training. For our students to be competing in the international arena, they'll be competing with other students who will be 18 and 19 years old. So we get them in very formative years, and in many instances, they're the years that can be quite a challenge for young people. They'll possibly be living away from home for the first time. They're managing themselves in terms of their nutritional intake, managing doing the washing, managing doing the shopping, managing all their assessments, managing to get to class every day. So there are an awful lot of factors to which we have to consider how best we provide wraparound support for them. I think it is important too to stress that our philosophy is that we treat the students as young adults. So the relationship for many of them will be quite different to what they're experiencing now, possibly in their private ballet schools or studios. Because in that situation, quite often what is happening is that they get to the top of the pyramid, and maybe there are only 2 or 3 students at that senior level. Then they come into an environment like ours, and between Paula and myself, we can take 15 to 20 students into each stream at the beginning of the year. So suddenly that student finds themselves in an arena where there are a lot of people around them who have probably done particularly well in various competitions, who have higher legs than they ever dreamed were possible. They can turn more times than they ever thought was humanly, that anybody human was capable of. They can balance on their left earlobe longer than they thought was possible. And it means that they have to start growing again. And it's quite confronting for the students to go through that cycle. And then, of course, we have a situation too, because our relationship with the ballet company in particular means that we have 1 or 2 members of the ballet staff from the Royal New Zealand Ballet come and teach every single week at the school. So from the very first week that they're here, fundamentally that competition and that arena to which they're looking for that elusive contract and that elusive job starts from day 1. So even though they're friends and they're peers, there is a sense of competition in that situation. And then, of course, the ballet company may take 3 or 4 for a production. So then for the rest of the class, what does that mean for me? Are they not interested in me? Is there any reason for me to be here? Why am I studying here? All of those questions start to come into play. Then we get into the second year, then we get into the third year, and of course the third year is very much about performance and looking for jobs and opportunities. Again, it enhances more concern. So all of those things we have to be conscious of, and we're trying to get a situation where the environment is as supportive as possible, but also provides the student with as much capability as it can. And sometimes that means it's not only what takes place in the studio, but happens also outside the studio. I'm just wondering, Matt, do you talk a little bit about the contemporary stream? Because I've been pretty classical focused so far.
I'm one of the full-time contemporary dance tutors here, along with Holly, who is in Europe at the moment, and Gina. And it's a privilege to work with such an amazing team, as well as the ballet staff and the health team. As a contemporary tutor, we do have a different focus. We work a lot on floor-based techniques, as well as more ballistic things. For us, I think that's a really strong thing that defines contemporary dance in New Zealand, is we have such an understanding of the floor and the connection to the floor and the in and out of the floor. And I think if you go anywhere in the country, or sorry, anywhere in the world, that's something that's really unique to us. And so that's something that you want to really embed into the students. And going off what Gary was saying, is we really want to empower our students to take control of their own careers, and so having that understanding from that connection to the floor and all the way up to the ballistic stuff. I specialize in quite physical movement as well, but for me it's really important that we soften as well. So it's not always going 100%, and I think that's something for our young dancers, is to really get an understanding of that, is to just strip it back to basics, and it starts with the breath. And if you can't just be still for a moment, you're not going to be able to flip through the air and be crazy. It's all connected. And so that's something that I've learned the hard way. I went 100% all the time, and you know, you do burn out. And to learn that the hard way, it's made me a much better teacher. And so I'm so grateful that I get to be in such a supportive environment like this, where I can now pass that on to the next generation of dancers who are so amazing. And I feel like they've already got such an understanding of their body these days, because I think back in my day, you were just kind of taught that you're just a commodity, you're just a body. And I think now there's a real understanding of that we're a human being first, and then a dancer second. And so that's something as a tutor, like I'm really proud of that we do here, and it's something that's very important to me. With our contemporary classes, we always start off with some breath work, some floor work. We do have technical elements in there as well, so we still really embed our technical practice, really using the backs of the legs, so trying not to use the superficial muscles, using the backs of the legs, the glutes. We do embed a lot of strength training into our classes as well. We try to embed a lot of cardio training, depending on if we're getting ready for a season as well. We, kind of if we're going for a performance, like we'll be working up to that, and then you need to bring it back a little bit so they've got the energy to do the performance. And that's something we work really closely with the health team here. But yeah, it's like, and it's great to kind of grow with the students as well. First year students, it's really about stripping them back. And as Gary was saying, it's like you do come from being at the height of your school, and then you do have to come back down and work on those basic foundations. And then by second year, you're kind of, that's when you want to be running and flying and kind of really putting into practice. And then by the time you get to third year, that's when you really take control of your future. And we send you out into the world, having the comfort of we're still here, but that's when you go out and do secondments. And so yeah, it's really about from the ground up, it's all connected. And yeah, but yeah, it's amazing school, and yeah, I love teaching here. Yeah.
Do you have any questions for us? Because I'm conscious we can keep talking, but then as I said earlier, I'm particularly concerned that we're not necessarily addressing anything you want to know. So are there any questions at this time?
I do have one online. Wonderful. So the question here is, what's the youngest age for the level 6 diploma, for students joining the level 6 diploma?
For the classical stream, we like the level 6 diploma students coming in at the age of 16. So if that's in New Zealand, that means they probably will have been completing their year 11 at school. So that they are 16 by the time they arrive, at the beginning of the year. For the contemporary stream, it tends to be at least 1 year older, possibly 17, so they've done their year 12 at their secondary school, and then moving on as the industry requires them to have more life experience, really, by the time they go out there, rather than the classical companies wanting young bodies to get long service from each body.
Hi there. You talk a lot about making the dancers industry ready. How do you measure the success of achieving that?
It's a really good question. Obviously, we work very closely with industry practitioners. So our assessment events, we always have a panel where we bring in outside people. And also, a lot of the guests that Paula and I would choose to have work with the students are themselves potential employers. So we're always trying to put a situation where the students are to the fore, but also it provides us with feedback as well about the development of the program and things. I think it's fair to say we do use the phrase industry ready a lot in the institution, but I think it's important also to recognize that not every student is probably going to succeed in this arena. And it always fascinates me, when we were in the COVID years, there was a lot of anxiety around the fact that companies were simply not performing. And it prompted us as an organization to examine a little bit about where our graduates were placed and what they were doing. And I was fascinated that 19 of them are now physiotherapists. And I think what always interests me is the diversity of which the graduates have utilized their training. Because I think in terms of the creative skills and problem solving, much of what their training provides them will be applicable to any arena. But many of them have still followed creative pursuits, not necessarily always in dance. We've got doctors, we've got lawyers, a lot of architects. So that's always been interesting. And as I say, the institution is very much about dance training, obviously. 70% of our course is practical, and only 30% is theoretical. So, and that's one of the reasons that we chose to be a diploma rather than a degree in terms of our final outcome, because our level 7 qualification is a diploma. If we were to go down the route of a degree, in New Zealand, it's enshrined in legislation as to what components requisites have to be within a degree. And a high element of that is research. So we were concerned that we didn't want to dilute the program by having students having less time in the studio. That's really an important element for us, and the practical study is so important. So that's why we chose to become a diploma. There is also those students who study the level 6 qualification. It's a 2-year qualification. Entry into the 3rd and final year is by invitation, and the students have to apply for entry into the 3rd year. That 2nd year exit point is really critical, because we do find that not every student necessarily, by that point in their training, determine that they want to be dancers. Some of them utilize that option at that point. They're in a crossroads situation, and they decide to go off and do other things and utilize the option to go into university or for further study. Or some of them diversify, moving into sort of Pilates and things like that. So it's really important for us, because I have to say that some of the students coming to the school lose their passion, and that's a reality too. I think, especially in the ballet arena, a lot of students will have come through an environment where ballet is something that they've been doing religiously since they were 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 years old. Their focus is very much on doing that all day, every day. And then they get to an environment like this, and they suddenly stop and go, do I want to do this any longer? And some of the toughest discussions we ever have, unfortunately, are often with a student who recognizes that this is no longer what they love and no longer what they feel passionate about. But they are so worried about telling their parents because of the sacrifices that you have made on their behalf. So that's, for us, is one of the most challenging environments we find ourselves in.
I just thought it might be a good opportunity to segue into Sophie, who is a 3rd year, just to talk maybe about the industry ready part as well, about your experiences with secondments, because our dancers get the opportunity to, as Gary said, to work with different companies and different people, and Sophie's had quite an extensive secondment opportunity or opportunities coming up.
Yeah, so I've been pretty grateful this year to have the support from you guys, and I've been able to head off and dance with 2 companies so far this year, Asmida and Footnote Dance Company. And I'm returning with them in the next few weeks to work with them again. And I've gone and done a fringe festival show, a few random projects here and there. As a contemporary dancer, it's quite diversified in that sense of many different projects that you can be a part of. Yeah, and I think a lot of my cohort are doing the same. And it's really great to be able to support each other in this final year, well, the 3rd year. And we're all going off and doing different projects throughout the year, but coming back to the school to take classes. And yeah, it's a great year to be able to do that with the support. Yeah, I feel like that's really how we define industry ready, is actually going into the industry. Yeah.
There's 8 third years in contemporary, and what did your year group start off? So yeah, it started off as 12 in first year, and then 8. And, yeah.
Another question here. Do you teach any specific contemporary technique?
In terms of traditional contemporary techniques like Martha Graham or Cunningham, we do not specifically teach that. There are, of course, embedded like kind of C curves and contractions that's embedded in contemporary. But I think the great thing about our style of contemporary is it's very modern and it is very up to date, and that is why we're like industry leaders when it's come to our contemporary, because we don't get stuck in a very old school technique, which has a great place in this world, and yeah, like I said, we still embed those trainings into our program. But in terms of technique, like we not necessarily.
Any other questions?
Kia ora. Thank you so much for your talk tonight. Really appreciate it. I'm just wondering, what do you look for in future ballerinas in particular? Beyond perhaps the what's actually on the entry requirements. Yeah.
It's a good question. It's difficult because every audition and every year that brings in new students, you see different things. And I think the first thing that strikes us as being critical is knowing that it's a good match for us in terms of the time that student is going to spend here at the school. And part of what I want to talk about tonight is the audition process and also what we do look for. So I'm hoping that will answer your question. First of all, we audition always in New Zealand in the first instance, and then we audition in Australia as well. And we also have digital auditions. So it's a composite when we're pulling together the class group, the cohort. First of all, each student will take a class in their major stream, and then they will have a class in their minor stream as well. So that's really the opportunity for us to consider physical capability, potential. We obviously have to look for, in the classical stream particularly, we also have to look at a situation of partnerships, because a good portion of what we do, be it repertoire or curriculum based, is pas de deux. So we have to have some representation from the male dancers as well as the female. If we have a situation where all the women coming into the school who are auditioning are 5'11" and all the boys are 4'6", I've got fundamentally a huge problem ahead. So I have to look at trends, what's happening in that environment as well. And I think there is a moral obligation on our part to offer places to those students who we believe will genuinely have a career. Now, the career that they might think at the time, at the point of entry, is the same career that we see for them, is not always as linear as some of them think. There have been situations where students have auditioned for a classical stream, and in our professional opinion, they would be better placed focusing on contemporary. And sometimes we'll have that discussion with them as well. It has to, at the end of the day, be something they feel strongly about, and it has to be in their heart that that's what they want to do. There's no point swapping over if it's not exactly genuinely what they want. There are some students who will audition for us who we choose not to take on the premise that the grounding and the preparation that they will have received is possibly not enough for us, because our program requires between 25 to 30 hours of practical study a week. If that student has only been doing 5 or 6 hours of training a week, the physical toll on taking them into our program potentially means they're going to injure themselves. And then if they injure themselves, where are they going to be? They're going to be sitting up against the mirror, watching their peers progress every day. Mentally and psychologically, that is a very difficult environment to which they can feel that they're making progress. The flip side of that is we have students who will come in having won their gold medal for Giselle, having danced it at 27,000 competitions around the world. Why on earth would they want to go and stand as part of a cohort and learn how to do a plie again? That might not be their intention. And again, if they feel that they're not satisfied in that relationship, it's not going to be a win for us, it's not going to be a win for them either. So the audition is a huge leap of faith for us. And what I often feel, surprisingly, the most exciting part of the audition is actually the interview, because it's at that time when we hear what their aspirations are, what their vision is for themselves, why they feel that this would be a good fit to come to this school, and what it is they want from us as well. I often say to the students, the resources available through the New Zealand School of Dance are a massive buffet table of huge opportunities and lots of experience and lots of expertise. But if you keep coming back to that buffet table and all you do is tap into the chocolate mousse for 3 years, you're going to come out of the school ill-equipped. You have to be open, you have to be courageous, and you have to consider that maybe the dancer you think you're going to be when you're auditioning is not necessarily the dancer you'll be when you graduate. And that's no bad thing.
Any chance to talk about myself? So I had a different pathway coming in to the school. I was very determined throughout my whole training leading up to it to become a ballerina. So I had auditioned for scholars, national scholars, associates, and all of that. Didn't get in at all because I had auditioned for classical all throughout. And then I auditioned for classical for full-time, and I was extremely grateful to be offered into the contemporary stream. I think that's probably one of the best decisions I've made so far in my dance career, because looking back now, I was 16 when I auditioned, and I'll be graduating as a 19-year-old. And I've definitely, throughout my years, my values and just my technique as well as a dancer, I've improved so much. I can just look back at my first year, and now there's so much that I've been able to take on from the tutors, but even just as a dancer, but as a person, have changed so much, just grown up, and yeah, looking forward to how I can take that on going out of the school at the end of this year, and continue that with even more passion and curiosity for new styles of dancing, which I didn't even think about when I had auditioned as trying to be a classical. Still love my ballet, but there's just a whole world has been opened up thanks to these guys. Yeah. Did you want to add?
I think in the audition process, I found that I really noticed that I was going to get really well taken care of here, just with how welcoming everyone was, and you could really feel the community that you build when you arrive here, and I think that really helps as we grow throughout our time here. Because yes, we're getting ready to take on the industry, but it's still, you don't lose your well-being, and I think we really get taken care of here with all of the help from Pilates and our student support manager and everything. So that's really great, and having that audition and finding that out was really comforting, because I knew I wasn't going to be like left alone or just get everything pushed on me. So yeah, that's what I found.
Right, I have one more question here. Does the School of Dance collaborate with Toi Whakaari?
We are right now, because over there is Tony Tafexis, who works for Toy, and Tafaya. Thank you for the microphone. We share the building with Toi Whakaari, which is the drama school here, National Drama School. It's a wonderful facility that you guys have been part of, but online you're missing out, so come and see it. We're quite separate courses, so we run very, very separately. We share the same staff room and the same bathrooms with the tutors, so obviously there's beautiful camaraderie there between us, but it's often quite hard to collaborate with the different courses because they're very specific, and we have very clear units between us. Having said that, often our choreographic season is the biggest one that we can collaborate with. So we do work with often the management students come on board. It's a really important thing, especially in the contemporary world, because that is what you'll be doing in the industry, is collaboration. Both with our performance season as well, often the costumiers, so drama school has quite a few different courses that they run, so they have certain props design, so often we work with designers with lighting design, management students, the costumiers. Strangely, it's the actors that we don't have a lot of connection with, but we do often share tutors and have the opportunity to do that as well. There's always scope and room for more, but it's just often quite project-based with how we work with them.
Any further questions? Please don't leave thinking, I wish I could have asked. Any question is valid, truly. Sorry? Okay, we've just got one question here. How long would the student be at school through the day, you mean? Yes, what? Yes. No.
I'll answer that. We anticipate that the students, they all start class at 9 o'clock, but we hope that they'll arrive a bit early to look after their bodies and warm up. So we anticipate that they will get here at 8:30, and the day normally doesn't end until 5:30, 5:45. I think in our program regulations we say 8:30 to 5:45. So sometimes they get a slightly earlier finish. And Saturday, we don't work Saturday and Sunday very often. We do like to work on a weekend when we have the associates visiting, because we'd like the associates to see what they can aspire to in the near future. And we also do have, if we have visiting tutors, not just tutors, but choreographers, etc., we will often use Saturday up to fit in more rehearsal time, etc. But as a rule, we don't work on a Saturday and Sunday.
How would a student transfer from the New Zealand School of Dance to the Royal New Zealand Ballet?
Okay. It's not necessarily transfer. What tends to happen is that the ballet company will identify those students that they may be interested in. So, for instance, what we've had just recently is we had 7 of the third-year students were toured with the ballet company for Swan Lake, and 1 second-year student. So already during that time, the ballet company starts to get used to those dancers and see how they function as a company member and the level of contribution they make, how they handle themselves, their professionalism, their self-management, their timekeeping, all of those things. So the company gets a sense of how well that student may integrate into the unit. And then the artistic director for the ballet company also comes at the mid-year point when we have our assessments, our big exam, and also contributes by giving feedback at that time. So already in terms of the director's consciousness, they're already making decisions about who might be a good fit. The reality for us, though, is the ballet company at maximum is between 36, 37 dancers. So if there is no turnover in the company, even if there is a student that they're particularly interested in, there may be no contracts available that year. And then on another occasion, we might find that 3 or 4 of the dancers have chosen to move on, and 3 or 4 contracts are available. So it changes each year. But basically, our relationship with the company starts, as I said, from the very first year. The artistic staff from the ballet company will visit the school, and already at that time, they start to make decisions about who they might be interested in.
What's the younger level options for ballet students? Is there an entrance below the level 6? And this is asking in relation to Australian students.
We do run the associate program, which starts at the age of 13. In the past, we have had the occasional Australian come over, but that requires the commitment of coming over 4 times a year, so coming over to once each term to spend the weekend with the associate program. But actual entry into full-time, it really is 16 years old.
How does the associates program work?
Okay, that's done by audition as well. So we audition towards the end of the year, and then we audition for classical and contemporary students, just the same as the full-time courses, so that there is a natural pathway through to the full-time course. And we take the classical students who are going to be entering year 9. In other words, in New Zealand, they'll be starting college for year 9. And for contemporary students, we like to take them from year 10. Then they stay with us for 3 years, working through junior, intermediate, and senior associates. And as I say, they'll be coming 4 times a year to the school to spend a whole weekend of dance. And when they get to be senior associates, they spend a week at the school with the full-time students, and we call that immersion week, so they get to know how the program runs and what a day's training is like over a week generally.
Do you have any information about boarding or home stay for Australian students or international students as well?
Yes, I've got a piece of paper here and I wrote it down. All students, unless they're living at home when they come, so they're Wellingtonians, will be either staying at the halls of residence, but you can only stay there from age 17 onwards. So our young classical students will go to homestay. Now they can find, if they've got relatives, that's fine. If they find a private homestay, that's also fine. But otherwise, we have a relationship with host families, and everyone is hooked into a host family to stay. So until you turn 17, you can't stay at the halls. But if you want a little price guide, this year, host families, if you are, there's placement fees, etc., but a weekly standard homestay for full board, which includes, that'll be giving you a packed lunch to bring away, is $390 a week at this moment. So over your 40 weeks or whatever, you can sort of work that out. And then with the halls of residence, we have a relationship with the universities here. We don't have our own hostel. And depending, because they're all independently, they live independently, and they're like small apartments, which is the hall of residence we use. We don't have a hall of residence that does cookings, which is why they're 17 years old. And it depends whether they're in a one bedroom small apartment or up to a 5-bedroom, and they will all be separate bedrooms, apartments. And it ranges from 331, I'm told this, up to 439. That includes their Wi-Fi, it includes their heating and everything else, but it does not include any food. But fortunately, it is within walking distance of the school.
Are you good?
Yeah, it's always our aspiration to have as many New Zealanders as we can, and that's why we primarily audition here in the first instance. I mean, it would be wonderful to think, between Paula and myself, as I say, we take between 30 to 40 students into the first year. That's an awful lot to find within New Zealand alone. So we supplement by bringing students also from Australia. And also, we have to be realistic. The number of, as I say, we've also got to take into consideration the male-female ratio. And in New Zealand, there are not that many boys who are studying ballet either, so we often have to go to either Australia or Asia. So all of those factors come into play. So we would love to think that we could get an entirely New Zealand cohort, but we are in a global market, and I think it's important. We also feel, we found during COVID particularly that we obviously at that time the options were limited for us to access students outside the country. And in some ways, I think it's been healthier to get the Australians and international students back, because I think in terms of overall perception and also motivation for the students, it's really good for them to be in that arena where they're pushed and also culturally, I think it's really a part of their education to experience all of those different backgrounds, the diversity of culture and ethnicity. So yes, principally, wonderful if we could get everybody from New Zealand. Practically, probably not. And we don't go into the situation on the premise of going, there's a certain quota. I think that would be wrong to do.
Hi. You said that in the classical stream that you take them when they're 16. Do you take anyone older than 16 into the first year?
Yes, we do. We do. We've taken some students into the program this year who already turned 18. Yeah. I mean, it's not, again, it's not a hard and fast rule that we would exclude anybody who had talent simply because they were 17 years old. But we also don't want to get a situation where somebody comes to the school when they're maybe 19 or 20, graduates at 23 is competing against other students who are 18, because especially ballet companies, unfortunately, they do tend to err on how much value, shall we say, they can get from the life of that dancer. So it can be quite difficult. We don't also want to prohibit the students' opportunities by having them, as I say, graduating at 23 and 24. It's just not fair on them either.
You were saying that how the ballet company comes and visits the students in the ballet industry. Do you have contemporary companies that come and have a relationship with the school and the students?
Yeah. It's also a positive and a negative that New Zealand has many different companies, which is great. Being a contemporary dancer, it's not just about the companies as well, it's about connecting with independent artists. So we definitely do have quite, as we mentioned earlier, quite a few that come in and teach, or they come in and we bring them over from Australia, from around the world. Often it's graduates that have gone off and done amazing things, to bring that wealth of knowledge back into the school, and then to allow the students to develop with that. That's where our secondments work quite well in the contemporary, is that it's really important to go off into their environment and see what that is, but we definitely do bring people. It's not often a regular thing, as the ballet company is just down the road. Footnote is sort of down the road as well, so we have quite a good relationship with them, or a very good relationship, but it's not a regular thing, like weekly, but it's always there. There's always people popping in. Yeah, it's really important for us to keep connecting, just so that our practices are up with the industry as well. Our secondments also, we have close secondments with Australian companies too, so it's important to keep that relationship just as close as New Zealand Dance Company as well.
Kia ora. I have a follow-on question from the question about 16-year-old intake in the ballet stream. You mentioned that the contemporary students will often start at 17, but is that the norm, that they're starting at 17, or is there a wider range of ages starting into contemporary?
Yeah, there's definitely a wide range. We sort of say that 17, 18, just so that they have independent thought processes in themselves, and they're a bit more sort of, independent thinkers, is always a good thing. But sometimes a 16-year-old can be way more mature than a 23-year-old. So it's certainly not limited to that's the age that we take. In the industry, they do like them to be a little bit older, but I mean, as Sophie said, she was 17 and went to Berlin last year on an intensive. So it kind of does depend on the person. Sometimes we take them in at 16 because we feel that they've sort of reached what they can do in their own private sector teachings, and that it could be detrimental to wait another year because they might get stuck, they might get bored. It might be certain habits that they're creating that we kind of feel we need to get hold of them now. And sometimes it's the opposite, that, oh, you need to keep going with what you're doing. And we have a number of outreach programs that I feel really help with that, so that you can keep those tools alive and those connections back to the school, but then being able to take that back into your own practice as well. So your question of 16 versus a 21-year-old, there's a big range.
I'm just conscious of the time. We've probably got time for just one more question.
Definitely can. There's always lots of classes that you can do, and it's important that if you're coming in as a hip hopper, we don't teach hip hop, and if you feel that that is something that can influence your practice, then yes, of course. The only thing that we look out for is burnout. We don't want them to burn out. So if we see that the practices afterwards, if you're dancing all day and then going into classes in the evening, that's often not a wise choice. when you should be sleeping and eating properly. But yeah, definitely if that's your passion, whatever it takes to keep that passion alive, of course.
We can keep going, all right?
During the audition process, do you interview just people you're interested in? Like, you know, you have a certain amount of people that audition. Do you just interview ones that are more of interest?
Yes, truthfully, we do. It's not that, I'm not saying that we're more interested in them, but also, as I say, for the various reasons, if we feel that it's not going to be necessarily a very good fit for us, then we wouldn't progress necessarily to the interview. So, yes, in theory, there are a lot of tertiary providers, especially in Australasia, and each one has its own particular characteristics. They all have their own certain courses. They all have their own focus. So we're not saying that from our perspective that you're not going to have a career or that we're not necessarily interested in you, but it just might be that the program that we deliver here, we don't think is necessarily going to be the best marriage for you. One more?
The weekend entails a very condensed week of full-time training. So if they come in as a classical major, they will be doing a contemporary class and a classical class on both Saturday and Sunday. But then the rest of the time is spent in their major. So if they've auditioned as a classical, they will be doing point, they might be doing repertoire, they'll be doing coaching. We don't often do pas de deux because we don't have a good balance of male-female. And if they are contemporary majors, they will do a classical class, they will do a contemporary class, and then possibly do some composition, some improvisation, and at the senior level they may get some partnering or something like that. But yes, it's a mini full-time. Yeah.
All right, well, I'd just like to, again, say thank you so much for joining us this evening. I hope that we've answered most of your questions. If not, we are all around, so please don't hesitate to just come and approach us. And of course, the students are available too. I would just like thank Tony for his assistance this evening in running the live stream. Yes, so thank you all, and good evening.